My grandparents live on a small public lake in Colorado. When I was younger, my brother and I would often go on walks around the lake. One night, after we had eaten dinner, my older brother and I decided to go on a walk. It was later than what it was when we had gone before, but the walk only took about 15 minutes, so we went ahead with the trip. About halfway around the lake, my brother decided he needed to take a piss. There was a public restroom and a playground nearby, but I wanted to wait on the trail. While my brother was gone, I felt the call of nature myself. Being a 12-year-old boy, I took a leak under a pine tree. I turned around and about pissed again. Standing at the edge of the trail was a skinny, hunched middle-aged man with thin, greasy brown hair. After the initial shock wore off, I waved to the man and asked how he was. The man seemed to snap out of a trance when he heard my voice, promptly walking away without saying anything. A couple seconds after he left, my brother walked onto the trail. Turns out he saw the man and was hiding behind a bush, as any loving brother would. We were extremely creeped out at this point, but we decided to keep going. As we hurried along, we saw the man walking in front of us. My brother and I slowed way down, and the man did the same after multiple glances over his shoulder. This continued for a while, then the man sat on a bench. My brother and I practically ran past him. We began to jog when we were out of sight. All of a sudden, my brother grabbed me and pulled me off the trail into some bushes. He said he had a bad feeling and told me to shut up and lay down. Keep in mind, my brother was 6'4", 210 pounds, man-child at 15. But he was scared out of his mind. Sure enough, a few minutes later the man shuffled by, talking on his phone. At this point, I executed the ostrich maneuver, burying my head in some brush. After what seemed like a good 4 to 5 years, my brother told me to get up. We walked home through thorn bushes and ragweed, but we didn't see the man again. We arrived at my grandparents' house 3 hours after we left. I recently asked my brother about this encounter, and he swears the man said, "No, there's some guy with him." I understand it may seem like my brother is messing with me, but to this day, he will not allow me or my younger brother to leave his sight whenever we go outside. It also took me a good 20 minutes to get him to talk about it. I'm a long-time lurker, and this is one of my favorite spots on Reddit. This happened to me when I was probably 14 or 15, so I'll try to remember as much details as I can. When I lived in my parents' old house, my bedroom faced towards our backyard, and underneath my window we had a smaller roof, which represented the portion of my house that led into where our basement was, if that makes sense. Anyway, the smaller roofed area of my house was right next to a fence that separated me and my neighbors' backyards. It was therefore very easy to climb up from that fence onto the smaller roof and then to my bedroom window. My boyfriend at the time would actually do this frequently, usually to kiss me goodnight, and yes, sometimes I snuck him into my room. I was a teenager, what can I say? Anyway, one night I remember I was laying on my bed reading the Lion King sticker book for some reason. I can remember this very well for some reason. My bed was against the same wall that the window was, so I couldn't see anything in the window while I was laying on my bed. My window was open because it was the summer and it was very hot that night. I can't remember how late it was, but probably around 10 to 11 p.m. because my dad was asleep. He was a mailman and woke up early, and I remember my mom was taking a bath. So I'm on my bed, enjoying this Lion King sticker book immensely, when all of a sudden I hear a male voice whisper through the window, "Don't scream." I bolted out of my bedroom and into the bathroom, freaking out my mom, telling her I was not sleeping in my room at all that night. I ended up sleeping in my parents' room, and my mom slept in my bed. She even said she felt freaked out sleeping in my bed that night. I've tried to figure out who exactly it could have been. I really don't think it was my boyfriend, because he wasn't one to do jokes like that, and even if he did, he would have told me the next day that he did it. I did live near a couple of teenage guys, but for the most part, I didn't interact with them, and they also didn't seem like that type that would do something like that. I remember the voice sounding very deep too. It's one of those things I'll always remember vividly in my mind when I think about it. For the longest time, I would not sleep with the window open, even if it was really hot out, and back then, we didn't have an AC, so it really sucked. But I was just too scared. So random voice from the window? Let's not meet. I attended George Washington Elementary School, located on 5th and Federal in South Philadelphia. The school held classes for grades K through 8. The students were mostly black, with fewer Asians, whites, and kids from Mexico, South, and Central America. I started there during the 6th grade, and as with all schools I have ever attended, I quickly became known as a troublemaker and class clown. It wasn't that I enjoyed creating mischief. I did, but I also couldn't help myself. I could not go one day without causing some trouble in one form or another. I even prayed to God at night to help me become a good kid. But I guess he was busy with something more important. Anyway, that's not the point of the story. This story is about the man I met when I was in 7th grade. By the time I was in 7th grade, my teacher, Mrs. Kelly, already knew who I was, largely because she taught my crazy sister the year before. So Mrs. Kelly already wasn't looking forward to having me in her class. While in Mrs. Kelly's class, I routinely caused disturbances and the occasional fistfight. Things went too far when a girl in my class asked to see my anatomy and screamed for the teacher once I obliged. Everyone believed I exposed myself unprovoked, but I was tricked. Now I was more than just a bad kid. I was a bad seed. Shit. Mrs. Kelly had the bright idea of sending me to the school's counselor, Mr. Ness. Mr. Ness was a funny-looking guy from New Jersey. He had a curly mullet and one of those cleft chins that resembles a human butt. Mr. Ness and me hit it off right away. He seemed to respect me, so in turn, I respected him. I was barely seen in class as my teacher was not fond of having me around. It wasn't long before other problem kids started spending time with us in Mr. Ness's office. There was candy and games. We began orchestrating activities for the children, and I even helped them start a foot hockey league after school. Mr. Ness and me were pals. He even began visiting my house. My mom was uneasy about this, and I saw her point. And Mr. Ness seemed harmless enough. Besides, he bought me new video games and things like that. He was worth having around, and I figured since I routinely carried a knife, I could handle things if they got out of control. But as I said previously, he was a harmless guy. Things with Mr. Ness progressed. My mom allowed him to take my siblings and I to Franklin Mills Mall for lunch. My cousins even attended. Eventually, my mom even agreed to let Mr. Ness take me to his nephew's soccer game in New Jersey. Mr. Ness's family seemed to think it was weird that he brought me along. Even his nephew DJ thought it was weird. Also, I would like to point out that Mr. Ness did not have a girlfriend. Anyway, we attended the soccer match and joined his sister and friends at her house that day. I had fun with DJ and his friends. They even became fans when I showed them some cheats for the game Mortal Kombat 3. Mr. Ness and I left that evening and went to his apartment. I had been to his apartment before, but this time, we were all alone. This time my older sister and younger brother were not there. As I mentioned before in other stories, adults were attracted to me as a kid. I was cute and smart for my age, and my mom accepted this, but always sent a sibling or two to keep an eye on things. Well, this one Saturday night, we were all alone at Mr. Ness's apartment. Billy is what he wanted to be called away from school. His plan was to eat dinner at his place. He made a roast. It was getting late, and after the concern his family seemed to communicate to me, I just wanted to go home. I didn't want to eat any roast, and I told him. He didn't seem to care until I started making demands. He went out to the car and came back to tell me that it wouldn't start, and so I'd be spending the night. This was unsatisfactory, and I didn't want to stay. And I knew for damn sure that my mom was going to hit the fan when I called to tell her that his car conveniently wouldn't start. My mom did have a car, but would not have been able to drive to New Jersey and get me. There was no Google Maps in those days, and we couldn't afford a computer anyway. I made the call, and as predicted, my mom was upset. And she knew she shouldn't have allowed me to go in the first place. She immediately began making phone calls, and my grandfather soon came to get me. My grandfather was a man who did not play around when his family was concerned. He had some strong words for Mr. Ness, and a warning which he delivered at gunpoint. I spent the night with my grandfather, and he was uneasy. He did not like the fact that I allowed myself, along with my mom, to end up in that situation. He visited the school, and that was the end of my relationship with Mr. Ness. Mr. Ness disappeared from school, and I heard that he was working at a nearby school. Fast forward a couple years, and I was living with my aunt and attending high school. I was at Franklin Mills one weekend, and I ran into one of my old classmates, whom brought up Mr. Ness, and informed me that he managed to molest the nephew of another classmate. Mr. Ness, I would like to meet you again, as I am a big, strong man with a child of my own, and I feel a deep hatred for people who prey upon the weak and innocent. I was lucky enough to dodge that bullet, and the school system failed that little boy, whose name I do not remember. It's a shame that there's so many cracks for people like yourself to slip through. I live on a block of flats in England, and was on my way literally 3 minutes down the road to the local pub. I was meeting my boyfriend and his brother there, as they just finished work and were on the train back home. My boyfriend had already rung me saying it would be 10 to 15 minutes until they got there. I had been sent there early to grab a decent seat near a TV, as the England rugby was due to be on. Anyway, I'm walking down the road looking at my phone when I hear a woman shout, "Miss! Miss! Hello! Miss!" and vaguely waving in my direction. I look up and there's this 25 to 28-year-old woman with this massive box at her feet, and she's now waving me over. Me, being stupid, went over to see what her problem was. "Miss, can you help me take this box to my car around the corner? It's really too heavy." The woman smiling at me while pointing to the box. Now, as soon as she said this, a thought crossed my mind. I'm a small girl myself. Why would she be asking me, and not some men? Does she really think that I could lug this massive box with her? Sorry, I'm busy. I try to brush her off while I'm turning away. Please, I'm desperate. I have to get home to my kids. You have to help me, miss. It's too heavy. She's now yelling at me while squatting trying to lift the box. I start getting annoyed now. Look, lady, my boyfriend and his brother will be here any minute now, and they can help you lift this box. I don't know why you let alone asked a small girl on her own and not one of the men on the street. I'm busy. Yes, I did feel bad for saying this to her, but alarm bells were ringing in my head. I couldn't understand why she had asked me when there were men on the street literally queuing up to use the cash machines and walking past. The woman scowled at me. She gave me pure evil, pursed her lips, and took her phone out. I continued to make my way to the pub. I was 2 shops away, and I could clearly see one of the regulars outside smoking. I looked back over my shoulder just in time to see her lift the box up on her own and walk down the alleyway that was right behind her. What the hell? Thank you for tuning in to yet another True Scary Stories from Reddit. If you like this, leave a thumbs up and subscribe. I'll be posting a lot this weekend since next week I start school. Then it will turn into 2 to 3 videos per week. I am sorry for the mistakes. It's my first video reading it out loud, and I tend to see the words mixed up at times. But I hope to see you again soon for more dark stories. Have a great day, everyone, and stay safe.